What if I told you that the most important thing to happen in Las Vegas recently was not a new casino opening, not a celebrity residency, and not another record-breaking weekend on the Strip? It was a closing. When the Mirage shut its doors in July of 2024 after 34 years, most people saw it as the end of a classic era. But what actually happened was far more consequential. That closure was not nostalgia. It was a warning shot. Because when a landmark like the Mirage can no longer justify its place on the Strip, it signals that the business model underneath Las Vegas is shifting in ways that affect every visitor, every room rate, and every casino floor. Today, we break down the 10 reasons why the Mirage closing was a much bigger warning than most people realize. Number 10. It didn't fade. It shut down. Most Las Vegas casinos that close follow a slow and painful decline. First, the crowds thin. Maintenance slips. Rooms start going for $50 a night just to keep bodies in the building. Restaurants close one by one. The vibe shifts from excitement to sadness, and eventually the doors shut because there is nothing left to save. That is the standard Vegas death spiral. But the Mirage did not follow that script. There was no slow bleed, no years of declining revenue. One day, it was operating. The next, Hard Rock International announced the closure date. 2 months later, the doors were locked. When Steve Wynn opened the Mirage in 1989, it cost $630 million. It was the most expensive resort ever built at the time. It launched the modern mega resort era and sparked a building boom that reshaped the entire Strip through the 90s. This was not some forgotten property limping toward irrelevance. And yet, it was shut down with the efficiency of a corporate memo. That speed tells you something important. This was not a desperate reaction. It was a calculated decision. And calculated decisions on this scale do not happen unless something much bigger is at play. Number 9, this wasn't a failing property. Here is what makes the Mirage closure so unsettling. It was not broken. When Hard Rock International took over operations in December of 2022, after paying $1.075 billion, the resort was still functioning. Rooms were still selling. The casino floor still had traffic. The Beatles' Love by Cirque du Soleil was still drawing audiences after welcoming more than 11 million guests over its 18-year residency. 137 employees had been with the property since the day it opened. That is 34 years of continuous service. You do not get that kind of loyalty at a place that is falling apart. And when the closure was announced, Hard Rock committed $80 million in severance pay to the 3,000 workers being let go. That kind of money does not get allocated for a property that was already failing. So if the Mirage was not collapsing, why shut it down? Because the decision was never about what the Mirage was. It was about what the land beneath it could become. When a functioning, iconic property gets closed, not because it is losing money, but because the future opportunity outweighs its present value, you are watching a fundamental shift in how Las Vegas operates. And once that shift begins, every legacy property on the Strip moves onto the same chopping block. Number 8, nostalgia couldn't save it. If any property in Las Vegas had earned the right to survive on legacy alone, it was the Mirage. Think about what this place represented. It was the first true mega resort on the Strip. Before the Mirage, no new major resort had been built on Las Vegas Boulevard in 16 years. The city was losing ground to Atlantic City. Tourism was flat. Then Steve Wynn dropped $630 million on a tropical paradise with a volcano out front, dolphins in the back, and a vision that said Las Vegas could be more than just a gambling town. Within 30 minutes of opening day, an estimated 40,000 visitors walked through the doors. Tourism jumped 16% the following year, one of the biggest single-year increases in the city's history. The Bellagio, the Venetian, and nearly every mega resort that followed can trace its DNA back to what Wynn built here. So when the closure was announced, the emotional response was enormous. Visitors flooded in for one last look. Steve Wynn wrote a lengthy tribute. The nostalgia was thick and real, but none of it changed the outcome. Not a single tear or viral social media post altered the corporate math. The Mirage proved something painful. In today's Las Vegas, sentiment does not balance a spreadsheet. And if the property that literally built modern Vegas can be erased, then nothing is sacred. Number 7. Prime strip land became more valuable than the brand. Here is the cold math behind the Mirage closure. The yacht property sat on roughly 65 acres of prime Las Vegas Boulevard real estate. Recent land deals on the Strip have reached anywhere from $6 million to over $40 million per acre depending on location. The land beneath the Mirage was not just valuable, it was among the most sought-after real estate in the country. When Hard Rock International paid $1.075 billion for the operating assets and locked in a $90 million annual lease, they were not buying a casino. They were buying a position on the most famous boulevard in the world. The plan was never to preserve what existed. It was to demolish the volcano, gut the tropical theme, and build a 700-foot guitar-shaped hotel tower. That tells you where the industry is headed? The Mirage brand, for all its history, was worth less than the dirt it stood on. Development potential trumped decades of identity, and once that logic takes hold, it does not stop at one property. Every aging casino on the Strip now exists under the same equation. If the land is worth more than the building loses. That is exactly what happened to the Tropicana, 2 legendary properties gone in the same year. That is not coincidence. That is acceleration. Number 6, Vegas is choosing reinvention over renovation. In earlier eras of Las Vegas, when a property started to show its age, the solution was a refresh. New carpets, updated rooms, a rebranded restaurant or two, maybe a flashy new show to bring in younger crowds. That approach kept places alive for decades. The Tropicana survived 67 years through rounds of renovation, but the Mirage did not get that chance. Instead of pouring money into updates, Hard Rock International chose total transformation. Not a renovation, not a rebrand, a complete teardown and rebuild from the ground up. The volcano, the tropical atrium, the signature gold-tinted windows, all of it scheduled for demolition. In its place, a guitar-shaped tower, a reimagined casino floor, expanded convention space, and roughly 800 to 1,000 new hotel rooms on top of the existing 3,000. This is not just one company making one decision. This is the new playbook. Across the Strip, the message is the same. Updating is no longer enough. Patching up an aging property does not compete with building something entirely new. And when you look at what is happening on Las Vegas Boulevard right now, you can see this philosophy spreading. The Tropicana was not renovated. It was demolished for a stadium. The Mirage was not refreshed. It was gutted for a guitar hotel. The question every remaining legacy property should be asking is not how do we improve, but how long before someone decides we are worth more as a construction site than a casino. That shift from preservation to replacement changes the DNA of the entire Strip. And once it starts, it does not slow down. Number 5, tourists no longer anchor to one property. When the Mirage opened in 1989, the entire business model was built on one assumption. A guest would check in, stay for the whole weekend, eat every meal on property, gamble on property, see shows on property, and never need to leave. The tropical atrium, the restaurants, the entertainment, everything existed to keep you inside. For years, that model worked brilliantly, but by 2024, travel behavior had fundamentally changed. Modern visitors do not commit to one resort anymore. They book shorter stays. They bounce between properties. They eat at one hotel, catch a show across the street, and gamble wherever the vibe feels right. Apps, ride shares, and social media have turned the Strip into one giant menu where tourists sample everything and commit to nothing. The Mirage was built for a guest who would spend 3 or 4 nights in one place. Today's visitor might spend one night at 3 different hotels. That behavioral shift undercuts the entire foundation of what a property like the Mirage was designed to do. Any resort that still relies on the old model of keeping guests locked in is fighting a losing battle. The new Vegas tourist is mobile, distracted, and always looking for the next experience. Properties that cannot adapt to that reality are the most vulnerable to the same fate. The Mirage was not just a victim of corporate strategy. It was a victim of how people travel now. Number 4. Icon status is no longer permanent. For decades, there was an unspoken rule on the Las Vegas Strip. Once a casino reached a certain level of fame, it felt untouchable. Names like Caesar's Palace, the Bellagio, and the Mirage carried a weight that seemed to guarantee survival. They were not just hotels, they were cultural institutions. Tourists came to Las Vegas specifically because those names existed. The Mirage was at the center of that mythology. Siegfried and Roy performed there for nearly 14 years. The Beatles' Love became one of the most successful Cirque du Soleil productions in history. The volcano was one of the most photographed attractions in the state. And yet none of that protected it. When Hard Rock made the decision to close, rebrand, and rebuild, the icon status meant nothing against the financial logic. That shatters a belief that many people held for a long time. If the Mirage can disappear, what exactly is safe? The answer is nothing. Legacy does not buy you immunity. Fame does not guarantee your future. The only thing that matters now is whether your property aligns with the financial model the Strip is moving toward. And if it does not, your name on the marquee is just a countdown clock. Number 3. The closure revealed a new financial logic. For most of Las Vegas history, the equation was simple. Build a casino, fill the rooms, make money on the gaming floor. Everything else, the restaurants, the shows, the pools, existed to support that central revenue engine. But the Mirage closure exposed a completely different kind of math. One where casino revenue is no longer the primary driver. When Hard Rock International shut down a functioning property and committed to a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar rebuild, they were not chasing better blackjack numbers. They were chasing redevelopment value, brand expansion, and future-proof positioning. The calculation was forward-facing. What will this land generate over the next 20 or 30 years if we build something new, versus what will it generate if we keep running what is already here? And the answer clearly favored tearing it down. This is a seismic shift. The old Vegas rewarded operators who kept their doors open and their tables full. The new Vegas rewards operators who think like real estate developers, who see properties not as businesses to maintain but as assets to optimize. That is why VC Properties, the real estate investment trust that owns the Mirage's land, structured a $90 million annual lease with Hard Rock. The real money is not in the chips on the table. It is in the ground beneath them. Once that logic becomes the dominant model, the Strip stops being a collection of casinos and starts being a rotating portfolio of development sites. And once operators realize the market accepts that logic, the next closure becomes easier. Number 2, it lowered the psychological barrier for future closures. Before the Mirage, the idea of shutting down a major Strip icon felt almost unthinkable. Sure, older and smaller properties had come and gone over the years. The Riviera closed, the Sahara rebranded, but those felt like natural endings for properties that had clearly run their course. The Mirage was different. It was still relevant, still profitable, still recognized around the world. When it closed, It crossed a psychological line that had never been crossed before. And here is why that matters. Once one major name disappears, and the world does not end, the next closure becomes easier. Investors become more comfortable with the idea. Operators see the blueprint. The public adjusts its expectations. The emotional resistance weakens. It is the same pattern you see in any industry when a precedent gets set. The first time is shocking. The second time is expected. The third time, nobody even flinches. And look at what followed. The Tropicana, a property that had been on the Strip since 1957, was demolished just months after the Mirage closed. Two legendary names erased in the same calendar year. That is not a coincidence. That is momentum. The Mirage did not just close a chapter for itself, it opened a door for every future closure on the Strip. And the properties that should be paying the closest attention are the ones that look most like the Mirage did 5 years ago. Aging, iconic, sitting on prime land, and ripe for someone to run the same calculation. The barrier has been broken, and once a barrier is broken, it does not come back. Number 1, the Mirage was the first clear signal. It was not the loudest warning. It was not the most dramatic moment in the history of Las Vegas. But when you step back and look at the full picture, the Mirage closing was the clearest structural signal that the Strip has entered a new era. An era where history is no longer preserved. It is actively replaced. Think about what the Mirage represented at every stage of its life. In 1989, it told the world that Las Vegas could be more than a gambling town. It proved that spectacle, luxury, and entertainment could coexist under one roof and attract millions. It launched a building boom that turned Las Vegas Boulevard into the most famous strip of real estate on the planet. For 34 years, it stood as living proof of that vision. And then, in a matter of months, it was gone. Not because it failed, but because the city it helped create had evolved past it. That is the real warning. Las Vegas is no longer a city that holds on to its past. It is a city that consumes it. The dunes became Bellagio. The sands became the Venetian. The Desert Inn became Wynn Las Vegas. And now, the Mirage is becoming Hard Rock. The cycle is not new, but the speed is accelerating. And the question every visitor, every local, and every investor should be asking is simple. If the property that built modern Las Vegas could not survive, what makes you think anything else will? What do you think? Was the Mirage closure just business as usual, or is it the beginning of something much bigger? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button and subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next.